ready to go, everybody.
Kendall Kempke.
All right, we're starting.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the October 14th Advisory Park Board meeting. Let's call a roll.
Davis, Millet,
Here.
Plum,
Here.
Metz, Franz,
Here.
Herman,
Here.
Hudak.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. So let's start off with the approval of the September 9th meeting. So move to the minutes.
Second.
Perfect. All right. That was quick. Citizen statements.
Gotta take just a quick voice vote.
Oh, sorry. Let's
All in
do a vote.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, citizen statements. Seeing there are no citizens here, let's move on to old business, which we have no old business. Let's move on to new business. Discuss and recommend 2025 park shelter fees.
Yes, so as I provided some background in your memo, city departments every year about this time during budget, we take a look at all of our departmental fees, review those, see if there's any changes that should be made. And our park shelter fees were last updated. They took effect in 2021. Prior to that, the most recent increase before that was in 2014. And when they were discussed in 2024-21, the Advisory Parks Board members suggested review and possible adjustment of the fees again in 2 to 3 years. What they're trying to do, obviously, is to try to avoid large increases in the fees by waiting so long to review these. So we are bringing the fees back for the Advisory Parks Board to take a look at. When we take a look at our park shelters, our facilities, and try to compare them to other municipalities or county facilities, it's really hard to get apples to apples. Erica started taking a look at those, and it's a lot easier on pool fees because most of the pools in the area have the water slides, those types of things now. Shelters are, different sizes, different amenities. Do they include electric? Do they have a restroom? Do they have a kitchenette? Those types of things. So instead of trying to pull together information that we didn't think was very pertinent as far as comparisons go, what we're simply recommending is a $5 across the board increase plus tax in the rental fees. And you should have a proposed schedule for you included in your packet. This is except for the Lakeshore Park, the new Four Seasons building, and their staff is actually recommending a $50 across the board increase. With the Lakeshore building, we have been hearing over this first year of operations from not only the renters of the facility, but people in the community saying that is really cheap. As you compare it to other facilities, it is very reasonable. And that was the direction we were given as staff when we were constructing it, to make sure that it was kept reasonable so that individuals in the community that don't have access to the water or facilities on the water, that they had an opportunity to have events if they chose to on the water. And right now, for a weekend, I'm going to refer to the structure just so I don't give you the wrong numbers. Take a look at Lakeshore Park. Currently, most rentals are taking place on weekends, so I'll just look at those. For a resident, it's $288.75, non-resident $341. So if you're a resident for a use of that building for basically 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. if you would like to, for a 12-hour rental under $300. So that is why we're looking at increasing those slightly, just because, again, we're hearing that consistently from not the users, but also individuals in the community. As I state in here, those rental fees, whether it's for Lakeshore or any of the park shelters, is the daily rate for the use of the shelter. We don't do an hourly rate. And with that, we'll take any questions. This is something that we'll be looking for the board to, if they're comfortable, make a recommendation to the council. And then as part of our budget workshop with the council, which is the last week of this month, the council has budget workshop for 2 days. We'll let the council know during those discussions that our revenues may or may not reflect increases that the Parks Board is recommending. So that's how we would take it forward. So if there's
I have a question. Mr. Mauer, on the Lakeshore rental, do we know how many rentals so far since it's open, or this calendar year, do we know? Do we have an idea? 12 dates, 15 dates?
No, it's rented almost every Saturday, Sunday, and we are renting into 2026 at this point.
Okay,
I think there's very few Saturday or Sundays, even going into next year.
Next summer, there are no Saturdays
okay,
available.
which is awesome. And just to follow up on that, what, the $50 increase, where did that did we look at other communities that have a facility? I mean, not so much on the water, because not everybody obviously has water like we do, but just roughly, how did you come up with the $50 increase?
What we took a look at, again, it's hard to find comparable facilities. We looked at, when we established the initial fees for Lakeshore, we looked at private rentals here in the city. We looked at some of the public ones. We looked at some of the other communities. And the most one that Chad and I really could compare to is up in Outagamie County. They opened up a shelter that's pretty close to ours, very nice, very new. And their fee, I would say, is probably triple of where we're at.
Okay.
But because we were given the direction to keep it to keep it reasonable, that's where we're at. I think the $50 increase is something that we talked about, just looking at the amount of time that our staff is spending doing the cleanup. And for this rental and for this building, because it is a little more elegant, we don't give out the keys to the renters. We actually have a staff member meet the parties there to start their rental. And then we have a staff member that comes in, secures the facility, help to make sure that things are cleaned up. So there's some additional costs there versus just giving a key for the shelter and use of the building.
And then just one more question. In that rental, what do they get at the Lakeshore Park? What's included with the rental?
Yep.
I know there's a small kitchen or whatever.
The kitchenette has plenty of counter space, plenty of outlets, a microwave, refrigerator, all the tables and chairs. We have tables and chairs that will seat up to the maximum seated is about 98. The building capacity is 125, but once we get the tables and chairs in there, it's a seating capacity of about right around 100. So the tables and chairs are provided. We do have a large screen TV for presentations, slideshows, those types of things.
Okay.
Inside, there's obviously restrooms for the indoor rental, and then there's exterior restrooms that are available to the general public, but also overflow for any other rentals as well.
And then people that rent it are responsible to put out tables and chairs. We don't provide staff for any of that.
Nope, we actually do.
Oh.
What Erica does when she's coordinating the rental, she'll send a little floor plan, and they will do a drawing. We say we've got up to 12 tables, 8 chairs per table. Show us how you want it laid out. And then Chad schedules the team. They'll go in there either the day of or the day before, set it up, and then same thing, we ask them, we don't want them moving the chairs and tables around because we don't
Right.
want them damaging things, so our staff will be up there at the end as well. So we do set it up, and then if we have a rental the next day, the staff that's up there cleaning, they'll set it up for the next day.
Well, I will have to say, for being a former county parks employee, that's quite an upgrade, because all we do is push the chairs out and the tables out, and they set it up themselves. And
Yeah,
you had to
we-
put them back on the,
We talked about that, but we also know how sometimes people
well, it gets
can
damaged, sure.
use those racks can become toys or push into the walls, and so we really wanted to try to protect the facility as much
Well,
as
that's
we
good.
could. So
It's awesome.
it's I think it's a pretty good service for the fee that we are charging.
I've been in Lake Shore. I really like it. You guys have done a fantastic job with that building. So it's great to hear that it's booked out so much. One question that I do have is in terms of these $5 increases, where does that put us comparatively speaking to other city parks, particularly in Appleton, Fond du Lac? How do we compare price point wise?
We have that information from the last time we went through this process, but again, it's really hard to have apples to apples.
I understand.
It's really, I would say that when we did the last survey, we were probably in the top third.
Okay.
When we took a look at Green Bay, Brown County, Appleton, Needham, Menasha area. But again, as we looked at it, and Erica coming in from another community taking a look at it, she's like, boy, this is just really hard to compare prices when it's completely different.
communities are gonna do different things.
Yep.
So I completely understand.
So I would say, just going back to that survey that we did 4 years ago, I would say we were in the top third or so.
Sure.
We weren't the highest, but we definitely weren't the
Okay.
lowest as well.
Okay.
Thank you much. Appreciate
Yes.
it.
I think everything looks, I would agree with what you guys are recommending, so I would feel comfortable making a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right. Miller?
Aye.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Franz?
Aye.
Herman?
Aye. Aye.
Hudak?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, next on the agenda, discuss and recommend Reeds Field 2024 CIP application.
So this is something that I believe when we discussed the CIP with the board earlier this summer, we let you know that we might be coming back with a revision to the allocation that we do have in 2024. It's also something that when we met with the council back in May, I believe we had our initial CIP meetings where I believe I let the council know again, if we're not going to be receiving that large dollar amount for the entire project, which we haven't received in probably the 12 years that the larger project's been in our CIP, and I fully get that. And not only that, but that project cost has gone up considerably just based on everything going on with the economy. So Chad and I actually discussed this, and we met with the recreation director from the school district. They utilize the Reeds Fields for their adult softball leagues. We also have some youth programs that take place there as well. But over the summer, I think we've seen more complaints coming in regarding the restroom condition at the REITs. Not only do the ball diamond user groups utilize that, but the boaters, when the sailing group is there using it for their regattas, we are receiving a lot more negative feedback. They are some of the oldest restrooms in our inventory. Between those and Rainbow Park, for the last 12 to 13 years, the council and the board have been very good at addressing the restrooms throughout the park system, updating those or building new. We've held off on the REITs and the Rainbow ones because they are part of larger projects, multi-million-dollar projects. But if we don't feel that we're going to see that large dollar figure come in to do the entire project at once. So we are recommending to the board, and we'd address any questions you might have, but let us go back to the council for a reallocation of that $500,000 that we have in the 2024 CIP. Let us move forward with designing a restroom concession building. Our intent would be to design that, bid it out between now and next summer, limp this existing facility through one more season, and then once the softball, baseball season ends, late July, early part of August, we'd start at looking at demo and construction starting then, so that hopefully by 26 season, then we would have a new facility. And again, I think it's a better use of those dollars right now based on the number of users through the boat launch, through our events. We do staff that concession stand, the adult softball. So again, talking with the recreation department, they fully support this as well. They've been helping by putting some improvements, I don't want to say minor, but some good grading and some other improvements into the REITs ball fields to help us keep limping those along. And so they felt they'd do that. I think they're doing it this fall to one of the other fields, and then knowing that we'd start doing something on the buildings. So that's kind of where we're at this evening. We'd like to answer any questions you might have, and then be able to go back to the council with any recommendation.
How old are these bathrooms?
Long.
Probably
If I had to guess,
Yeah, I was gonna say early
At least.
80s.
So 30 years
at
ago
least,
when
yeah.
I played softball there, 30 years ago.
They're still there.
I went in there last week, I'm like, this is exactly the same as it was when I played softball.
That's gotta be
30
30 years ago.
they're the stainless steel
Say, have you been in there? Yeah, stainless steel.
type facilities that it's in very poor condition. So.
And that is a very used facility, like besides the ball diamonds. I mean, we have a lot of the sailboat, like regattas down there, and a lot of the boaters use that bathroom.
And just typical park users on their walks using the trail system, so. And again,
So it can be reconstructed in a place that's gonna, where it's being built fits the plan so that, I wasn't sure that with moving everything around in the big picture that, as long as we got it in the right place, that we aren't gonna come back and say, oh, that didn't fit with.
no, we've had that discussion as well. We kind of know
Right.
how far back we can go with the backstops and how close to the road we can go with the fence.
So you're
the
basically
LCO
gonna
fences.
build it in the same location, demo and build in the same location, pretty much?
Pretty close to the same location, correct. And we've already had an internal meeting with planning staff and engineering staff just to get some initial input, see if they see any big hurdles to this. Internally, they said they don't see any big issues with it. Obviously, we'd work closely with them through the design process.
So a building of that age, what do you anticipate? Are we gonna need to, through city construction, new sanitary sewers, storm sewers, water laterals, all those things? Because the parking lot's gonna have to be redone eventually too.
Yep.
And how much of that will then play into the water runoff and all of that? So that, you know, if we're doing this first, how does that, in the end, as Mr. Franz said, how does that, you know, play into it all? We're gonna have to replace the guts, right?
Not all of the infrastructure.
Okay.
Our engineering staff did take a look at that. I guess to your question on more of the stormwater issues, we wouldn't really be increasing the impervious surface with this improvement. Once we get into the parking lot and we start making those improvements, that's when a lot of the stormwater management
Okay.
would come into it. We'd have to design for that at that point.
Okay.
So,
Because I'm just thinking that, you know, that, as we kind of like, I'm almost thinking like a reconstruction of the street in a sense, and how we've changed our ordinance with the parking lots and everything
Yep.
else.
we'd have to comply with just like any other business
Right,
owner.
so
correct?
that we build this so that whatever has to happen with the parking lots, you know, as he said, ties all in.
Yep, we'd have to make sure we're doing that not only with the ball diamonds, but with the parking lot construction
Okay.
as well, yes.
Very good.
So,
Given its central location in Menominee Park, it's
It's a
pretty
no-brainer.
critical that we replace these.
yeah, and like I said, we've really limped them as long as we can. Same thing with Rainbow. The complaints there continue to come in, and we'll address those hopefully in an upcoming meeting when there's some initial discussion going on the design of the Oshkosh Avenue Sawyer Street intersection, which we're waiting to do, then we would tackle that project as well. So kind of that coordination, and that's why these are the two restroom facilities that basically have been held on to as long as they have.
Well, I'll make a motion to move forward the $500,000. That's your request, right?
Yes.
To that, to move forward with the restroom facilities at Reach Field and Boat Launch.
Just like you said, Ray, this is a process we're going through, right? You might as well get started with something right off the
Yeah.
bat instead of
Something that's needed this
something
way.
that's needed right away, so it just makes sense to do
Yeah,
that.
it'll be multi-phases. If you recall, when we were doing the CIP, I've got it here, I didn't look, but I want to say back, in 2027 or 2028, we started requesting some dollars to do the restrooms, assuming that if we were going to get the larger project. But, so what we'll do is now do the restrooms, and some of those dollars that we were requesting in the CIP, we can start putting in towards the ball fields. If we can do one field at a time, we've got some initial cost estimates for that. Maybe we start tackling the ball fields one at a time as well. Then.
Because those ball fields need it. I mean, the
Yeah.
backstops and everything need it, so.
Yes.
Have a nice pretty bathroom with really bad ball fields, and don't want
Yep.
that, right? So,
No, so what we'll do, if this goes forward, once we get back into the CIP process for next year, when we come back to this board in May sometime, you'll see that shift, then we'll change those dollars from 27 or 28. Maybe we keep them in 27 and do one ball field, and 28 or 29, we tackle the next one, and then sooner or later, we're gonna have to tackle the parking lot.
I think that makes sense.
all right. So we had a motion,
Second.
which I interrupted. All right, here you go.
Millet,
Aye?
Plum,
Aye.
Franz,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Hudak,
Aye.
motion carried.
All right, next thing on the agenda, discuss and recommend additional funding for Pollock Community Water Park replastering project.
Yes. So, again, this is a CIP project, so that's really why we're coming to the board and looking for your input, questions and support. But as part of the pool budget for '24, we had included $420,000 to replaster the leisure pool and diving well areas. These are things that need to be done. It's been over 20 years since the new pool was constructed. So these are things that we've started to see cracks forming, water loss, just types of things that need to be done. Last year, we did the Lazy River, correct? We replastered the Lazy River. So we spread it out over 2 years. So again, we tried to be conscious of the budget. So back in '23, when we were doing the budget for this year, we do have a maintenance endowment at the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation. That was set up back in 2005-ish when they were doing the fundraising for the new pool. They had the foresight to say, let's raise another $1 million and put it at the foundation and hold it for when these types of major projects come along, or some other improvements that we've been tapping it for in the past. So that endowment is at the community foundation. I looked at the balance today. It's just over $1.3 million. And when we put it in the budget, we had anticipated or assumed that we'd be able to take the entire cost for this replastering out of that fund. However, we since then learned that the agreement for that foundation fund does not allow us to go below $900,000 in the fund. They don't want us to get to that low. So we're coming here to look to the board for some discussion on some funds that the project that I would recommend that we suggest to the city manager, finance, and common council is our park operations and administration office. That project is complete except for a couple small items that we're keeping an eye on that we might have to take a look at this winter and see if it needs to be addressed, some ventilation, humidity things. But that project, we've closed that out with the common council with any change order that we had. We had a contingency for that project where we still have about $325,000 in contingency. What I'd recommend to this board is we would utilize $250,000 of those remaining funds, leaving approximately $75,000 for that building fund and things that I might have to still utilize over the next couple of months or over the next year. So we would look at transferring $250,000 from that project for this capital project at the pool, so it would be transferred into the pool fund. And then what we would request from the community foundation fund is just under $200,000, so about $198,000, which would cover the project. The project, we have had a couple change orders, and so that project right now is up to about $448,000. So we took a look at it. It's something we weren't anticipating, but we are to the point where as they were doing the replastering work, we found some additional cracking in the gutters, some expansion joints that needed to have some new concrete placed. So it's, again, one of those projects that every 20 to 25 years has to be done, and it's a chunk of money, but I think that would be our recommendation to this board.
That was just, the timeline was gonna be my next question. I don't remember how, so this is really the first major maintenance that's been, to this extent, been done on the park, correct, since it was built, this replastering?
Other than last year when we started with the lazy
Right,
river.
yeah.
Yes, and that was a little over 300,000, I think.
Yeah.
So,
So it's been at least 20 years that, how many years is it?
2006 was the first
2006.
year, so
we're-
almost
we're
20 years.
Close there, so it's really, so just wanted to, it's a CIP thing, not an ongoing operational cost. So with the length of time that that's gonna last, I think that fits.
Yeah, and we've had that discussion with the city manager and the finance director that we've been fortunate to have this fund that we could tap for some of the heaters that might have needed some bigger work, some of the pumps that we had. And now that the fund is getting down there a little bit more because of these two large projects, these are some of the things we're gonna have to start planning for with the council, including in the city CIP. But we've been fortunate for the last 18 to 19 years that we haven't had to have those items in the CIP, So thankfully, the foundation and the fundraising effort had the foresight to raise that extra $1 million, which a lot of it sat there and was able to generate some good revenue in interest, so.
Any other questions at all? I think it's outstanding you have that much left for contingency.
Absolutely.
Right.
Off that building. I mean, I've done some buildings and the contingency usually goes away pretty darn quick as you get through the process of everything that you're doing. My only question is that 75 enough? Like, are you comfortable having that only $75,000 left in your contingency for anything that you might need to work on that building with?
Yeah, the item that we're keeping an eye on might be some additional soffit work, some vented softening and some exhausting to get the humidity to balance during the winter months. And the initial estimate that we had is between $30,000 and $40,000, so I'm pretty comfortable with the 75. We still have a couple small items, some equipment and a couple things that we still need to purchase, but I would be comfortable with the 75, knowing that we had that.
I think if you're comfortable with that 75, that's a great use of that money, that contingency, that, because Pollock Pool is something that you need to have right? It's a big part of the community, and you need to make sure it's not leaking and it's looking good and working well, so.
Yep. Yeah, the contingency at our new operations administration facility, obviously it's a percentage of our overall project budget, but once you start digging, and a lot of the times, as we know, digging in the city, you can find a lot of landfill issues and other things, and I know at the field operations facility, when they did some of that construction, they hit some things underground that they had to deal with, and so we wanted to be comfortable exposing the ground that we were prepared for something that might come up.
You always gotta have that in there.
Yeah, and just to give you, this board, a little idea, when it went to the council, after all the work change directives, I think we had one major change order, but that project came in, I think the change order was just under $30,000 on that building, so.
All right, any other questions? We got a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second?
Miller,
Aye?
Plum,
Aye.
Franz,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Hudak,
Aye.
motion carries.
All right, number 5, discuss discontinuation of Menominee Park Amusement Center.
I will kick this off, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and Chad as they oversee this operation. But if you recall, in a couple of years back, we had to come to this board and to the council and let you know about the extent of repairs that the carousel would have needed in order for us to continue that operation. And it was determined at that time that we couldn't go ahead and sustain the maintenance of that carousel. We ended up selling a portion of the carousel, I think. Correct, Chad? Or
The whole thing.
So we were able to find somebody that had an interest in purchasing that. So right now, we're looking at just having the amusement train and the water rides. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny and Chad. They can go through a couple things on, that operation. And we have it, the amusement centers in our, what we call our enterprise fund. It's supposed to be something that we're going to have enough revenue coming in to offset the expenditures. And I think they shared some information that they can talk about that shows that hasn't been happening, so.
Just in the memo, just a little bit kind of background for the facility itself. Going back to 2019, prior to COVID, we used to be open 7 days a week between Memorial Day and Labor Day for the event or for the area to work from. And it served well up until that point to go through. In 2020, we ended up having to close. In 2021, I tried bringing back additional staff to work with, plus looking at the increases we had in wages for staffing and some repairs to do the facility. Slowly started taking a decline, plus trying to get people in there to help work during that event or during that program was always a little bit challenging too. In 2022, we ended up reducing another day down to 3 days a week to make things work, and then tried to bring in additional special events where we could utilize our staff from the amusement center along with our other events that we were running to help service those areas to work from. It just continually gets to be challenging in that end from the staffing levels with increase, but more importantly, the amount of infrastructure materials needed to keep the train going for the track ties. Service for the train itself is about $6,500 a year to go through rebuilds and constructions for the trucks, for the train engine and the cars alone. From that standpoint, this year I'll probably be looking at close to over half to 2/3 of the track and ties that need to be replaced. Usually every 3 years we would go through, replace corners or alternate the corners for the rails that would wear and deal with items of that nature. But it's just one of those entities right now. It's a nostalgic part of Oshkosh. I think people had a lot of respect for the amusement area and what happened through its time here to go through, but it's not doing its full service for us anymore from what we can work with. Knowing that it pulls out of the enterprise fund to work from, it does take into fund balance of other areas. Doesn't feel right or just on that point, and I think it's time to move on to a new venue to see what we can research for the future for that area and better service our community for a recreational facility. With extent to the water rides and those types items, we've had some changes with the lagoon and how we can actually monitor the weed development through there. Has taken a little bit of our revenue source from our water trikes to our paddleboard pontoon boats. Kayaks and canoe rentals are still utilized at a point, but it has been minimal. But looking forward as we go with the addition of the kayak rental rack programs and using those waterways for those types of services might be a better way for us to look into the future and how the water passages are used through the community for that. From that, in the long term, should things take place with the Menominee Park Beach Building reconstruction down in the future, and that is a more better area for us to host some types of things of this nature, might be considered at that time, but nothing is planned at that point going forward. So. But numbers are on the back of the chart for you to review, just some things in there. But I'd say majority of the cost changes that have happened has related to our staffing levels and to the materials and supplies needed to maintain the train and keep the track in operation. So.
All right, any questions or comments?
That $11,000 negative, I'm assuming that's the 2020, on the far right.
Yes.
Is that, those are expenses that we did occur in 2024?
No, that's
No.
just what we're negative in our fund balance
For one,
right now.
got it.
Yes,
Okay.
over that 5-year period.
Got it.
So.
It's tough. I mean, you guys have tried to do everything to keep this open. And just knowing that with the, kind of black swan events like COVID and, the Pratt Trail reconstruction took a lot longer than people expected it to because of the archaeology project. And given that staffing is tight across the board for everybody, it's only going to get worse. So, I don't, it's sad that we have to do this, but if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do.
And Jenny can speak more to this, but because they are operating rides, they need to be 18 years or older, and that's really become a tougher group for us to find staffing levels in, that 18 to 20 to 21-year-olds. I think, Jenny, you've had success more on the concessions because it's the younger age and they come back after a couple of years, correct?
Correct, yeah. We do try to tie it in with our Brews on the Bay and our Tuesday night beach concerts and even the ball diamonds. That whole pool of people, have to be 21. So we try to, 18. So we try to, but those kids also want hours. So they're not going to work just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the amusement center and then not get any other hours. So then we'll try to supplement the events, but we don't always have the events. So it's hard to get those kids 40 hours, and if they can't get 40 hours, they need to find work to pay for school and whatnot. So it's really a tough area to get kids that want to work for the limited hours that it was open. We made it work, but it's tough.
Can you guys talk a little bit more to the weed situation in the lagoon and when those appear and, obviously why we can't treat it so just the general public knows? So.
Yeah, as soon as it gets warm out, we don't have, through the DNR, we're not allowed to treat that lagoon, so we can't treat it. And as soon as we get warm weather, it gets really thick in there. So then the paddle boats, we used to have the paddle boats, and those we couldn't even have anymore because the rudders underneath would get stuck all the time. And we had some mini pontoons as well that were kind of the same way, but those would get stuck too. So the aqua bikes still work out there, but it doesn't look pretty. And if anybody ever, falls in, but they just don't. They still get all full of stuff in them, and then the guys have to pull them out and try to get the weeds out.
The treatment program actually for the lagoon itself is done with our program similar with Miller's Bay, but they can only treat certain species of weeds. The lily pads cannot be treated, which is the most challenging one for us to work from. And a lot of it doesn't start till probably the second, third week of June, depending on the season to go from. We might get through Memorial Day or first couple weeks because the weed base ain't up yet, but after that, I call it the slow time of summer, that's when you want people out. It's just not conducive for operation. And we don't allow those outside of the lagoon to go out in the Miller's Bay or the area, so that makes it a little challenging from that.
So if we go forward with this plan, which I think makes sense, is there a market to sell the train and make a few dollars? to recoup some costs and the bikes? Or are we gonna store some of this stuff so that, you know, a year or two from now, if we do something different,
Makes
we,
sense to bring back or whatever.
yeah, bring back? I think the train would be one that, you know, would be difficult to store and maintain, obviously, if you pull the tracks and everything else, but the aqua bikes, canoes, kayaks, those types of things, I would think we could store at the shop somewhere so that if, you know, as you guys start to look at a new plan and new use of that area. Now does this include the concession stand too then, with Coles?
We haven't had a
Like
concession
what?
stand over there for the last couple of years. Because that really didn't make any money, so the last.
Since 19, we haven't had anything for
19, yeah.
concessions. Yeah.
Because my thought on that is if we close the Lakefront Cafe also, because there isn't a whole lot there other than the zoo, in a sense, to attract people to the cafe, of maybe reaching out to some of the food truck people to say, hey, could you, on a Saturday and Sunday, be interested in having a food truck in, you know, Menominee Park between 11 and 5 or noon and 6 or something, so that citizens that use what there is available, the zoo obviously and the beach, would have a place to get maybe some food or drinks or something.
The Lakefly does very, very well.
It does.
Yeah.
So the concession stand we were talking about that closed is the one that used to be in the concession stand by the train station.
Oh, okay, that
So
one.
that
okay.
one hasn't been open since 2019.
Okay, yeah.
The Lakefly is open in that.
So you're not planning on closing the Lakefly Cafe?
No.
No.
Okay.
Those sales have been very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so it's
just-
just inside kind of the lagoon stuff that you use in the train.
Yeah.
But just so you know as well, we did try in one of those years, maybe it was 2019, to get food trucks down there on the weekends. Food trucks, you know, they're phenomenal for big events and they love their big events. But we tried to get some in there in 2019 for the weekends down there, just on that side of the park to have, so people, if they came to ride the train, they could get a snack, and the food trucks just won't do it because they're not busy enough. You
Okay.
know, they want lines, constant
Right,
lines.
yeah,
Cars
I get it.
For them.
Yeah, they can't have the trickle, people walking up every now and then type thing, so.
Okay, all right.
I think, Steve, back to your initial question on the equipment, I would see us for sure storing the kayaks, canoe, stand-up paddle boards. Some of those water trikes, we'd have to really take a look at their condition, and but definitely hanging on to those other types of items. So, and yes, but the Lakefront Cafe definitely staying open, and
Okay.
that one has really been, the last couple of years has been really good business, so.
Good.
You know, looking at the water situation, we're looking at, that's an easy one, you know, that aqua bikes and kayaks and stuff can't get used very well in the lagoon, so there's that part. The train, that's a nostalgia thing that it's there, but I looked, this last year it wasn't operating. What kind of feedback did you get about, everybody was not happy about park access to begin with, but, you know, I didn't hear a lot of community outcry, but maybe, did you, regarding that it wasn't open or available, or?
I hear a lot of it because I'm in the park every day.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I'm in that
How come the
area.
train's not-
Yeah, still, you know, we still have a manager office there, so I hear stuff because I'm in the area, but
Mhm.
have you gotten?
Nothing, but I mean, people, I think for the most part, I think people thought it was because of the construction, so they were very understanding of it. A lot of people asked, well, okay, well, will it be open next year? And we said, you know, to be determined, you know, reevaluate everything, and nobody was overly upset about it, but I think people are curious and, like you said, nostalgic. I think a lot of people were looking to bring their grandkids to it and that sort of thing, so.
I think one of the big things, Chad, if you can maybe touch on, you know, the last statement where we're looking at approximately $50,000
Yeah.
to get the train track, the engine, everything running, but there's, if you can imagine down there's pretty much 4 walls where we pull the train in every night to secure it.
The tunnel.
That tunnel is falling apart, and so we would have to come up with some type of facility. Obviously, we need to pull it inside, make something more secure, and even if we did it in-house, and material costs alone, we're still looking at a pretty good chunk. So it's one of those things where, you know, that train engine is old. I think when we tried to find a year on the engine, we thought maybe something from the 50s, if I
It's a
recall.
53, Wisconsin motor, 1953.
And trying to find something to replace that is pretty difficult.
I know you've
So,
been limping that along for a while.
yeah. We actually had a replacement engine in the CIP for a number of years, just in case something happened. I think we were putting in like $80,000 each time, and finally the city manager said, we gotta figure out what we're doing with this train, either, stay in business, or let's get it out of the CIP and figure something out, so.
Yeah, so there's future capital input that's gonna be coming if it stays open, with some rebuild on there, maybe even the engine itself, that it could fail. That's not part of the loss that we're already, operating loss they're seeing, and plus the 50 that it's gonna take just to keep it going.
Between the track replacements, rails that are needed, ties, spikes that go in there, gravel leveling that we work with, the building itself does have to be built to specs to go from. There's actually some deficiencies with that building on code, what you need for spacing, for arms to go through for that type of track, plus just storage in general, which we've always had challenges with at that facility to go from. So it's just, it's either you bite it off or you move another direction from that standpoint of where we're gonna go from there. I just don't see I don't feel it right now from my own perspective. It's very
We can't continue going negative on the balance of the.
Yeah.
So we're
Even setting a price point for the train to operate, I mean, Jenny, what were we at, $1.25? Was it, or about $1.50 a ride? And we raised that up probably 4 years ago from $1.25, $1.50 at that point. And the other part is too, I mean, when the carousel left was one thing, the small little whip kiddie ride we ended up taking out. We don't have anything, just amusements are a tough thing to handle in themselves, to work from. That's why I went through the proposals years ago of removing what we could. The attractions down there, I think people still enjoyed coming to the train, but the staff time allowed to go into it to keep it open is challenging from that, for one amenity there to deal with.
So I didn't put this on there as a recommendation, I wanted to have some discussion and kind of get a consensus feeling, and I can see that it's not an easy decision, and it hasn't been for us either, as you can imagine. But, Tim, you brought up too, the potential $80,000 number that we've been carrying in the CIP up until the last couple of years is not included in that. So I think when we brought the carousel, that needed about $130,000 to $150,000 in repairs in order to keep it going. And that's when we finally said, you know what, we need to start backing out of some of these rides. It's not like a Bay Beach where they have the mass rides where they continue to generate funds and can bring in new rides and generate, additional ridership. That was never the intent here. It was meant to, from the early 80s, I think, when the city got into the business.
They've got staffing issues too, even as big as they are. That limits their, time that they're on. Said it's difficult, I understand it, but I mean, financially, that certainly is telling the story. I mean, the nostalgic part of it is the only reason to move forward, but then again, it's not paying for itself. So then now we're talking about, it's got to be supported by tax dollars to make that happen. How important is that? Not a little, not substantial.
And even when it could pay for itself, it was just barely paying for itself.
So I'm not hearing anybody excited to do it, but I can get a general feel that you understand, and I think at this, kind of like we are, we have to really support and say that, it's not something we can continue to move forward on, so.
So with that being said, with the discussion, you anticipate a next Parks Board meeting, you'll bring a full line recommendation from the board to move forward?
I'm
with
taking this
something
as
to
nobody
council?
jumping forward, saying that I'm feeling a consensus, let's say that there's enough head shaking saying, yeah, we agree that it's, the nostalgic part is there, but we also understand the business side. The reason I wanted to kind of get that consensus tonight is when we get into the budget with the council, our preliminary budget does not show a budget for the amusements, and I wanted to make sure getting into that meeting, we could say we had this discussion, and, it was a tough discussion, but I think it's what we need to do.
So you anticipate at the budget meetings, workshops that you and council have, that if the council supports it, you won't have to bring it back to us?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess I'm
Just
using this
curious.
as a nod of heads, like the city manager says at times. If there's consensus that I'm seeing here,
Sure.
I know how a vote would go, so,
Okay.
yeah. So thank you again. It's good feedback that obviously we need to hear, so.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's go to staff reports, right?
So the first one for me is update on Stevens Park and Rainbow Memorial Park play equipment projects. Taking a look at the CIP that we brought to the board earlier this year. Stevens Park play equipment was in the 2025 recommendation from this board, and the Rainbow Memorial Park play equipment was in the 26 replacement. A couple of months ago, the finance director and the city manager came to each department. There were certain projects in the 24 CIP that were intended to be funded with the ARPA dollars that we received from the federal government. Those dollars were, it was necessary to have commitment on those dollars, meaning a purchase order or the project done by the end of 24. We were asked to come up with projects that we felt, if there were ARPA dollars, there were projects from many departments that either they came in under budget, so there's ARPA dollars available, or there were projects, including some from our department, that we weren't able to get to for this year. And just so you know, Pickard Park out on the west side, we just are finishing up the master plan for that, and we had $350,000 in this year's budget to do the plan, as well as start developing that. Because we didn't and we weren't able to get to the development, those dollars, I let the finance and the council know that we wouldn't be able to commit to those dollars. So we gave those back, but in return, the council has approved additional ARPA funds, and what we committed to was the Stevens Park play equipment and the Rainbow Memorial Park play equipment. So we got back basically about $550,000 for park projects that we don't have to borrow for over the next 2 years. And so it's good news for us, because we are right now have the RFP out for those two play structures. And we'll have those committed, so we'll have purchase orders out the door by the end of the year, so that those ARPA dollars are committed to. The projects wouldn't be completed until late next spring, early next summer, but we do have them committed, which is what was required for us. So it's good news. And then with the Pickard Park, what the finance director and city manager told council is that we would put Pickard Park into the 2025 CIP. So basically, we're moving some projects around based on the available funding. So we should have the money for Pickard Park in the 2025 CIP. So those two projects, the play equipment will get done a little bit sooner than what we had hoped. So that's good news for those neighborhoods. Next item is an update on your discussion that you had at your last meeting regarding expanding the no-wake zone between Oshkosh Avenue Bridge and Wisconsin Street Bridge. We have had some discussion with the DNR about instituting a local ordinance in the river, prohibiting the wakeboarding and however we were going to term it, the water sports. Eric is doing some research for us. We're finding some communities and lake associations that have instituted some of those ordinances. But I just wanted to report to this board, our intent is we're not going to bring the no vote for the expansion of the no wake zone to the council until we have the ordinance regarding the prohibition of those water sports. We'll bring it together at the same time, saying the Parks Board is recommending not expanding the zone, but at the same time we're recommending this water sports ordinance, or what we're going to call it. And we'll be able to do that and hopefully have something in place before spring. So I've had that discussion with the city attorney, and she agrees we can just bring them both at the same time instead of having the action separate. So just wanted to update you on that. So we'll continue to work on getting some information pulled together on that. And then the last one is the update on the CORP, the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan approval. After this board recommended approval, it did go to the Plan Commission. They unanimously recommended approval, and then it went to the Common Council last month, and the Common Council adopted the plan as well. So that project is behind us. We're waiting for the final version to come from our consultant. As soon as we have that, we'll get it on the city website on the Parks page, and it'll be out there. If anybody wants a hard copy, you can let me know, but just like all our other park master plans, it'll be out on our Parks page as well. So those are my updates.
Thanks, Ray. Chad?
Yeah, one of this, I know we talked about financial status for the pool replastering project, but they're actually nearing completion up there. Actually going to start laying plaster down this week. Should be towards later in the week because it's going to be a little bit warmer. So excited for that to take place. They got a closure date of the end of October to be done with that project. So that'll be good for our winterization when we have to refill the pool up to those areas for just winter applications through the diving well in that area just for ground stabilization. So that project's coming along very well. Looking forward to seeing that completed because it's always a weather sensitive item, and we've had a wonderful October to be doing projects like this. So it's been very good on that. Next, if you haven't been over to 44th Parallel Park, all the playground equipment is up right now. They're actually going to be starting with the surfacing later this week for there, and we're going to be working with the electric division tomorrow, working with our light standards to get those in, and a little bit of drainage prevention areas through there too to get that done. So I would hope within the next couple of weeks that facility is up and running for people to use from that standpoint. So it'll be a nice addition to the 44th Parallel Park over there. So.
All right, thanks, Chad. Jennifer?
All right, so the first thing, so we ended our season for the zoo the last Sunday in September. So these numbers I actually am going to share with you are through that last Sunday. Today actually was opening day for our kind of fall and winter hours. So between today and December 31st, we're going to be open Monday through Friday from 10 to 2 while our zoo staff is there. They're there taking care of the animals anyways. So we're going to have some hours open to the public. So today wasn't a great day for that, but we did have some families in there while we were setting up and decorating for Zuluween. But so all these numbers are through the 29th, that last day of our normal kind of season. So in 2023, we were open a total of 120 days. We had 90,000 people, 457 was the number of people who visited for the season. So with adding on, at this point, as of September 29th, we were at 95,817 people, which is a great number. So at the end of the year, we'll be open a total of 181 days. So hopefully between Zuluween and being open throughout the fall and winter, we will hit that 100,000, which is just amazing for our tiny little zoo in Oshkosh. So it's a place that people love to come and see everything going on. So total programs offered this year was 277 versus 192 last year. So I had mentioned to you guys, Kate is our zoo education coordinator. She's a retired teacher of 30 years, first grade. So she is absolutely amazing, and she has really developed this following of her. I mean, the kids come every single day with their grandparents or parents. So with those 277 programs this year, we saw 6,833 people versus 4,780 last year. So
That's awesome.
She's just, I can't even explain how awesome she is, and the kids love her. And the daily programs, typically she'll do a morning craft with the kids. So they'll come in and they'll do a craft, and she times it just awesome. So they come and do their craft, and then we open the lake fly. So then the kids are like, oh, let's get something to drink or snack on. So they come in there, which ups the sales in there. Usually in the afternoon, we'll do something that's animal related. So whether it's watching a keeper spoon feed the wolves, or they might do something with the eagle, or it's more like a keeper talk that we do about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at 4 o'clock, usually our managers will do that program. So that sometimes we'll do meet and greet with our education animals. So they'll bring out, our hedgehogs or our chinchillas or our skunks. They might do a tour with the group. So it's kind of different. So 3 different programs a day we do for that. Then we have on Wednesdays what we call our Wildlife Wednesdays. This year we had WPS was a sponsor of those. So we had 12 this year compared to 10 last year. And last year we had 920, and this year we had 1,365 people at those programs. So those are when we bring in, we might bring in the new zoo showmobile, we might bring in Schlitz Audubon, we bring in different reptile people, birds of prey. So that's when a different organization comes to us and kind of does a program for our visitors. So those are super popular, and people really enjoy those as well. And then new this year, Kate started, she did like a Friday story time that she did with a craft. So she would read a book to the kids, and then they kind of would sit under a big tree and stuff on blankets and read a book, and then she'd do a craft to match that book. So this year she did 15 of those on Fridays and had 382 people. So that was new this year. And then also our special programming, so groups that came to us before opening day, because we opened the Saturday before Memorial Day. And we used to open that first Saturday in May, but because of, again, staffing, we can't get the college kids there early enough. So we had 256 people come before we were open. So that's school groups, some child care centers. They make a special date with us that they can come into the zoo and do something with their educational animals, or a meet and greet, or a tour. So we have 256 people for that. And then our outreach programs, which we're going to be working on more this off-season, fall and winter. We had 305 people where we went to them. So we do lakeside packaging twice a month. Kate and one of the zookeepers will go out to lakeside packaging once a month in Oshkosh and once in Neenah, and work with the residents there on doing a craft, or they might cut up diets for the animals for us to take back to the zoo, or they do all different kinds of things with the residents there, which the residents love, and the person who runs that program loves having us come to the zoo or come to Lakeside and do that. So we've had other requests, like some of the retirement homes. We did do one right across the street from the park this year. So we're kind of working on more outreach in the winter months for the staff at the zoo to get out and do some of that programming more there too. So, and then I think we mentioned to you we got an amazing software program for volunteers this year for the first time. So we don't have a number last year, but this year we had 74 hours of volunteer time directly in the zoo. We had a woman who came once a week and did some gardening for us. We had another kind of college student who was looking for some hours, so he came in on Fridays and helped Kate with some of our programs. We had some groups retransplant plants that from a different facility into the zoo. So we've had a total of 74 volunteer hours this year, and when that equates to $6,292.30 for those volunteers. We did have a really nice group today, even though again it wasn't a great day, but we had 30 employees or 30 staff that works at Winnebago Community Credit Union. So they came in today and helped me decorate for opening fall hours and for Zulaween, and put up corn stalks, and they stained some of our animal enclosures. So it was awesome having them there today. They helped a ton. So in donations collected so far this year is $9,522.40. That's compared to last year was $73,058.66. So we haven't seen our Hamburg donation come in yet for that, and we'll report again at the end of the year. And then our feed machines last year brought in $5,845.47, and this year they brought in, as of the 29th, $6,751.41. So a lot of really good things happening in the zoo, and now that we have Kate in this position and we have our software program for volunteers, we can really have a good picture from year to year what it really looks like. So prior to 2023, we tried to have some education coordinators that weren't real good at record keeping like we wanted them to, and so now it'll be great to really have some good numbers. So any questions on that stuff?
Great numbers.
Excellent work.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun to see all the kids, and if you don't follow our Oshkosh Zoological page, if you are on Facebook, like that page, and also our Menominee Park and Zoo page. Kate posts stuff on the zoological page pretty much every day that she does with the kids, and it really tells a story, how you can see the kind of in-depth stuff she does, and just the kids, you can just tell they're having a blast, so it's pretty cool to see. And then the other thing for Brews in the Zoo and Zulaween, so that's this weekend. Saturday's supposed to be beautiful right now. They're saying about 70s, so that'll be awesome. But we are really still in the need of volunteers. So Friday night we have our Brews in the Zoo. We have the band. We have a band down there, so live music. We have an adult costume contest. We have food trucks, and then we have the big event tent that we have, cards in there and dice, and they kind of play different games in there and stuff. So that's from 5 to 9 on Friday night. So we could definitely still use some help greeting people into the events. We kind of use a side gate for that. So we like people there greeting people as they come in, or serving beer. And then on Saturday is our Zulaween Boo, which that event usually brings in between 3,000, 3,500 people in a 4-hour span, so it's a super busy event. And we are looking for volunteers for that too, and that event runs from 11 to 3, so we look for volunteers from about 10:30 to 3:30. So if you guys are available or know anyone, share it with any groups you might know. We definitely are still looking for help for this weekend. So
How many are you looking for roughly, volunteers?
So Friday night, we probably need 2 or 3 more to kind of comfortably make sure everything is good. Saturday, we definitely are. Kathy was out today, so when I checked with her on Thursday, we had about 8 volunteers. And just alone, we have 12 games, and we have bounce houses. And we'd like to have 2 people on each game so that if one has to use the restroom or do something, we don't leave the game unattended. So we definitely need a good probably dozen yet for Saturday. So any questions about that stuff? Otherwise, if you're available, come on down and listen to some music and dress up and be part of the contest.
And beverages.
And beverages, yeah.
All right, thanks, John. Seeing there's no other business.
Just real quickly.
There's other business.
Well, you'll take a note, next meeting date is planned for November 11th. At this point, we're planning that maybe a joint plan commission meeting and Parks Board to have some discussion about a potential impact fee, park impact fee, as well as the update to the fee in lieu of parkland dedication as part of our subdivision ordinance. Working with planning staff and a consultant on that. At this point, it's penciled in for a joint meeting on that date. I believe we may look at having the meeting at the convention center. So stay tuned, and we'll make sure and stay in touch about that. But as of this point, that's what you should plan for.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
We're assuming all in favor.
Yeah.